Okay.
I have seen clients with multiple sclerosis go from having debilitating pain and numbness and tingling to literally living, walking, completely normal lifestyle. Maybe they get like a little bit of burning in their foot when they feel stressed out or something, but totally normal again. I have seen people with alopecia areata regrow all of their hair on their head and feel confident and not be bald anymore. I have seen countless people with rheumatoid arthritis get rid of their joint pain and inflammation completely. I have even helped a girl who the doctors kept telling her, we have to do surgery on your wrist. We have to do surgery on your wrist. Nope, completely healed, never had to get surgery on her wrist. Hello, thank you for tuning into the Natural Health Rising podcast. My name is Rachel Smith. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and I've helped hundreds of people naturally reverse symptoms of autoimmune diseases and other health challenges, from digestive issues to hormone imbalances. And in these weekly episodes, you're going to learn from myself and top health experts from around the world about functional medicine and holistic health tips to help you rise to your healthiest, happiest self. Welcome to today's episode. Today, I'm sharing an episode of a different podcast that actually I was on a few months back, the FDN podcast, or the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition program. This is the main school that I went to get my functional certification. And in this episode, we do talk a little bit about some business things, more from a more talking to functional practitioners as well. This was actually a live podcast recording, and there were a lot of other functional practitioners and FDNs watching this live. And I'd speak to the general public as well about autoimmunity and health issues. So I talk more about my journey, the importance of functional medicine, lab testing, diving into some of the specifics of the lab tests that I use, the importance of things like minerals. Somebody winds up asking a question about parasites in here because there was some live Q&A in the podcast as well, and some success stories and other holistic lifestyle tips. So please enjoy this episode with myself and Evan from FDN.
All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show. And I should have asked Tracy beforehand. I think I got this right. I think it's episode 332 of the Health Detective Podcast. So we are back. We were off all last week for Holistic Health Week. So I'm curious, let me know in the chat or the comments if you ended up catching Holistic Health Week last week, because you basically got 30 interviews. So hopefully that was good enough for you guys. And we're starting off this week with a bang. This is a personal friend of mine. We've traveled together before, and she is a very successful FDN who is still very much traveling. Her name's Rachel Smith, and we'll touch on that in just a second. So I have her bio here, and then we will jump into the conversation around autoimmunity specifically today, because that's a huge part of her story. So Rachel Smith is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and owner of Natural Health Rising, an online functional medicine practice that serves clients worldwide. After putting her own autoimmune disease into remission, she has now helped hundreds of others put autoimmune diseases, mold illness, and other major health issues into remission as well. Rachel's unique RISE approach, so RISE all caps like an acronym, involves utilizing functional medicine lab testing, nutrition, lifestyle changes, nervous system work, healing hidden infections, and detoxing from environmental toxins in order to help clients heal and thrive. She is also a speaker and the host of her own podcast called the Natural Health Rising Podcast. Rachel is on a mission to help as many people as possible rise to their healthiest, happiest selves. My friend, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for having me back on, Ev.
Yeah, I say welcome back because she was on in October of 2021. Or they must have missed us last week. We have a good audience for this. There's already 15 people live with us. No pressure. So I have to ask, just because it's so cool, we've, again, traveled before. We've been in Vegas together, Poconos together, but you never stop. So where have you been for the last 9 months?
Oh, for the last 9 months, I've been traveling full time. I went full nomad. I'm going back to Arizona actually tomorrow,
Okay.
but I am in Spain right now. I was in Bulgaria. I was in many different towns of Spain. I'm on an island right now off the coast of Africa. I went to Brazil. I went to Colombia. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. Yeah, I think that's most of it over the past 9 months. And it's been a very expansive journey, but I have to say, I'm so ready to come back to the US and settle down for a little bit.
Yeah, no, that is a lot, but I wanted to kind of start with that only because you're the epitome of doing FDN correctly, right? You're doing it full time,
Yeah.
you do it successfully, you're really serious about the business side, and you're getting the fruits of that. Like, how many people get to say in their 20s that they did this for 9 months? That's amazing. And I have to ask, because I feel like this is something I see on Instagram all the time, because it's really cool. Which island is it off? That's technically Spain's.
Gran Canaria.
Okay, yeah. Oh my gosh, man. We got
Yeah.
it. I can't wait to talk
I love
about
it here.
People I'm ready to chat about. So, Rachel, we'll get into the health side of the podcast. And the first question that we always ask on the show that I probably asked you years ago, but again, new
Mhm.
audience now, I would suspect. So, when did your health symptoms start and what did they look like when they began?
Well, technically, my health symptoms started the day I was born. Actually, when I was a baby, an infant, I had pneumonia, and I wound up being hospitalized for pneumonia multiple times in my life. Always had really, really rough lung problems. And then, when I was probably in elementary school, middle school, I had really bad digestive problems. I would come home from school just in so much pain in my stomach and just wondering why is this happening to me? Thought it was totally normal. Later on realized it was dairy. As I got into high school, I did start to change my diet and lifestyle because I became a competitive weightlifter, and I also did Muay Thai kickboxing, and just I became an athlete. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to become healthier, but I actually wound up still getting sicker as I moved into my late teens and early 20s. And I would say, yeah, late teens, 18, 19, 20, my hair was falling out. I had heart palpitations, trouble swallowing, insomnia, worse digestive problems, anxiety, panic attacks. It was just any symptom, you name it, I probably had it. And I had gone to doctor after doctor after doctor, as many people do in these situations. And every single time they told me my blood work was normal. Um, Pretty much just told me, you're too young for any serious things to be going on with you. We don't see anything wrong. Would go to specialists, GI specialists, you name it. And it wasn't until one night I believe I was 20 years old, 21 years old. I had extremely bad heart palpitations in the middle of the night. It actually woke me up.
Mhm.
I thought I was having a heart attack. I called 911. I said, there's something really wrong. They came, they did the EKG. They said, yeah, there is something that's off. Took me into the hospital. I wound up getting admitted, and they said, we have to do an exploratory heart surgery on you. So I'm sitting here like, what the heck? That is so scary. Out of fear, I wound up going through with the surgery, and I woke up. It was quite a traumatic experience waking up. And I immediately remember asking, what did you find? And they told me, oh, nothing's wrong. No electrical problems going on with your heart. For me, that was the absolute last straw. And that is what really propelled me to try functional medicine and holistic health. And that was actually where I finally got my answers. Very shortly after that, I figured out I had an autoimmune disease. My first functional practitioner made me change my diet, my lifestyle, and my symptoms started going away very quickly. And so I became very interested in this and super passionate, and wound up going back to school for this.
That's awesome. I guess it has been a while because there's no way that you would have not told me about the exploratory heart surgery last time. And like, I felt like I
Mhm.
heard that for the first time. That's crazy at
Yeah.
any age, let alone early 20s going through something like that. So I guess on one end, it's great that they didn't find anything in that sense, but that's still pretty darn scary to have to go through that. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, you said shortly afterwards, that was enough was enough and you're choosing this functional medicine route, but not everyone knows that that even exists, right? Even if they wanted to make that choice, hypothetically, they might not know that it's there.
Yep.
So how did you get introduced to the more functional side of things to even be able to make that choice?
That's a really good question. So even though I was seeing conventional doctors for years trying to figure it out, behind the scenes, I was actually doing my own research, Dr. Google. And I don't know what it was, but I went down a rabbit hole somewhere and started to listen to a lot of podcasts.
Mhm.
I was obsessed with Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss also talks about biohacking and health. I also listened to another health podcast that I really loved. And as I'm listening to all the stories and tips on there, I started trying things. Like I was doing cold showers when I was 20 years old. So this was, almost a decade ago.
Mhm.
Um, I was trying meditation. I actually tried being vegan before I even tried functional medicine, which did not work out for me. And so I had been learning on the back end and kind of started to learn about functional medicine and holistic health that way. And I just didn't it was really that heart experience that I said, okay, you know what? I don't trust these people anymore. I'm going to try and find some other sort of practitioner who can help me.
And I'm sorry sometimes when I'm live, like, like you're present, but your mind's racing because you are live, right? So I'm sorry if we missed this, but just to be clear, because this isn't something that was in your bio either. It's like you were taking a pre-med route. You're not like some hippie that was just challenging the normal system. Weren't you going into school for like biology and medicine before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to work in health because prior to my own health issues, my brother had passed away from a prescription drug overdose. And also my grandfather passed away with cancer. And I was very naive and thought, oh, if I go into medicine on the administrative side and I work for the CDC or become an executive of a hospital, I can come in and I can change things.
Mhm.
And so originally I had gone to school for healthcare administration, got that degree. I was actually working in corporate healthcare for one of the biggest for-profit healthcare organizations in the US. And I thought I was on my way. And I left that job when I had gotten really sick and discovered functional medicine. After that, I went back to school for pre-med to get a second bachelor's degree. And then I actually did get into medical school.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
went to medical school for a little bit and then dropped out to become an FDN essentially.
That is amazing. And
Yeah.
no, I just think it shows to the validity of your story and also your intellect because you said you're researching your own stuff. It's like, no, you're a very credible person that was having experiences. It was not
Mhm.
working. You're getting treated from Western medicine. It's not like you weren't open to it. And
Yeah.
so when that's relevant to the person's story, I always just like to emphasize it. Like that's not, you weren't trying to just challenge it to be a rebel. It's like, hey, no, this isn't working. And I just saw about 20 of you guys live. So welcome. If you do have any questions for Rachel, please drop them in the chat. And then if it's your first time listening, how this typically works is I'll spend the first 30, 40 minutes with the person, and then we'll prioritize audience questions towards the end. So Rachel, I want to focus on the main topic today because I think you could share so much on it. Normally I spend a little more time on the stories and, perhaps we can do that at a different time, but I know you have so much great stuff to offer people that I want to kind of extract that out of your brain. So we have this title of Can Autoimmunity Be Optional? And it's not meant to be a gimmicky or clickbaity thing. You actually even
Mhm.
said in your bio, yours is in remission. And for many people that deal with autoimmunity, which has included myself and included my mom, it's almost incomprehensible that you could hear like, wait, this person's been traveling for 9 months. Like I can't travel at all anymore. There's too many triggers. I don't feel good. I wouldn't be able to do that. So, I mean, clearly just off results, you've really been able to transform this type of stuff. So I suppose this is still part of the story to a degree, but what were some of the specific things in the world of functional medicine that led to you now being where you're at with your health, which is like a night and day difference from the story you just described to us?
Mm. Wow, so many things. I'll try and break it down and
Okay.
I'll expand on maybe something specific if you want me to. Um, the very first thing I ever did was change my diet. The practitioner I worked with had ran food sensitivity testing on me, gut testing, different things, and changing my diet to an autoimmune protocol or autoimmune paleo plan, whatever you want to call it, um, which in my opinion is not a forever diet, but when you're healing the body, it's really important to try and reduce as much inflammation and get rid of the food sensitivities. So doing that for me, I mean, I don't remember exactly because it was so long ago, but it improved my symptoms 50, 60, maybe even 70%. I mean, it was a night and day difference very quickly. Probably within 3 to 6 months, I was feeling like a totally different person. So that was the first part. Then, of course, doing this testing, and I wound up working with lots of other practitioners too, healing candida, healing other gut infections and parasites. At one point, I found out I had really bad heavy metal toxicity, and I actually worked with an MD, a functional MD for that one, and went through chelation therapy for a year, which I attribute to all of my tattoos that I have, the high amounts of tuna and sushi that I used to eat when I was in high school and as a teenager. So that was a piece. After that, there's all the functional pieces, but then I had to think about the lifestyle stuff. Sleep. I was terrible. I used to stay up late at night studying when I was in school or going out with friends or doing things that you do when you're a teenager and you're in your early 20s. I really started prioritizing that. I really started prioritizing stress management, time with friends, and then even working on trauma healing. I believe is a really big part of healing autoimmunity because if you have been through childhood adverse events or major traumas in your life, you are more likely to develop an autoimmune disease.
Okay, so yeah, definitely a lot to unpack. I guess, especially from the consumer perspective, this might be a way to start diving even deeper here. You know, I was genuinely posing the question to a degree in the title of "Can autoimmunity be optional?" Because after I'm pretty similar to you. It's about 10 years in the space for me as well. At least 10 years on the journey. Like I would maybe say 7, 8 years in the space. The first 2 to 3 were a little interesting, but I was actively trying to get better for the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer I was into this, I wouldn't be so bold yet as to say this for cancer, especially with its many different stages. I do think there's a time and place where, unfortunately, the human body, it's ready to pass on. It can't do anymore, and we can do everything we want holistically, but it might be time. I'm not saying that you should accept that belief for yourself. I mean, you don't give up till it's over, man. Keep going. But
Mm-hmm.
for cancer is a little different. Autoimmunity, though, and I don't want to speak ignorantly to anyone who's dealing with this right now, but the way that I look at it, I do kind of believe that this can be put into remission for just about any case. So obviously we're not making medical claims. Go talk to your doctor. This is just our opinions and stuff. But I'm curious at your point in your journey now and with how many clients that you've worked with and the variety that you probably see, is it fair to say that autoimmunity with the right tools and knowledge could actually be optional for most people? Or do you think that's is that understating it for me?
I would say for most people, it's optional.
Okay.
And I think remission can look very different depending upon where you're at in your life and depending upon the disease or dis-ease. For example, somebody might have been dealing with Hashimoto's, a very common autoimmune disease of the thyroid, for decades, and like their antibodies are like 5,000. They're in the thousands. They're super high. Their thyroid's really damaged, their body's really, really beat up. And then finally they find functional medicine. Like, we can do a lot. And I can even think of somebody off the top of my head right now who's a client who we took her antibodies from in the thousands to in the hundreds. We're still working together. But, that was after her suffering for over a decade, being super sick. And she feels amazing. Her life is totally different. Now, are we still working together? Does she still have some symptoms? Yes. Is there going to be a point where maybe there's like a symptom or two lingering because she's dealt with something for so long and maybe it really beat her body up? Maybe that is her remission where she gets to a certain point. But for a lot of people, you can get yourself to where your antibodies are none to very low, to where your symptoms go away completely. It doesn't mean that you just go willy-nilly, go back to eating whatever you want and living whatever lifestyle you want. If you actually adopt it as a lifestyle, the health changes that you make, you can maintain those health changes over time.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a key point. And again, this is my opinion and observation. I'm not saying that I can prove this from a clinical perspective, that's for sure. But it almost seems to me that once the let's call it loosely, like the pathways of the autoimmune disease are activated, so to speak, it seems to be easier to re-trigger in the future. So yes, when I'm
Yeah.
talking about a remission, I mean, the person's numbers are good and they feel good. That doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily mean that if all of a sudden, they start binging, I'll use an easy one, like gluten all of a sudden, non-European gluten, so like US gluten, that they might not experience the symptoms again. But as far as I'm concerned, if you have a disease that has no blood markers anymore proving that it exists in your body, the other labs are good, and you feel like you did at one point in your life, hopefully amazing. Well, to me, that's about as good as it gets, right? Even if it could be reactivated, I think that's a very amazing thing to achieve. So when you're working with clients now, where do you guys start? Because I'm sure maybe your labs have been adjusted over time. I feel like you've studied ever since I met you. You've always been studying something, like, hey, I'm learning this right now. Hey, I'm taking this
Yeah.
course. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So where do you start now with autoimmune clients?
Yeah. I want to say one more thing about your last
Oh,
question.
sure.
Just thinking of the listeners or who could be listening. I want to give some examples really quick of what I have seen, and I'll keep it short.
It's okay.
I have seen clients with multiple sclerosis go from having debilitating pain and numbness and tingling to literally living, walking, completely normal lifestyle. Maybe they get like a little bit of burning in their foot when they feel stressed out or something, but totally normal again. I have seen people with alopecia areata regrow all of their hair on their head and feel confident and not be bald anymore. I have seen countless people with rheumatoid arthritis get rid of their joint pain and inflammation completely. I have even helped a girl who the doctors kept telling her, we have to do surgery on your wrist. We have to do surgery on your wrist. Nope. Completely healed, never had to get surgery on her wrist.
Ignorantly, because
Mhm.
many autoimmune conditions can make people suffer greatly, but like there's only only a handful, I should say, that I mean, they can be directly fatal in and of themselves, and MS is one of them. I mean, the person can
Yeah.
deteriorate to the point of death. And so when you hear stuff like that, if I had that condition and I'm listening, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So
Mhm.
I want to, well, actually, the audience is participating. So this kind of leads to my next question. This is perfect. One person just had a comment saying it's truly a blessing to see people improve their health and life quality. Indeed, it is. And then Celia said, GI map with zonulin. Are you adding the zonulin to the GI map?
No, I think it's
Okay.
a waste of money.
Okay. So going to the GI map specifically, because I kind of want to break all these down to the degree that we're able. You said, okay, we're already assuming that they have leaky gut. So fair enough. And perhaps that's one of the reasons that you don't care about the zonulin as much.
Yeah.
And by the way, you guys can look that up. That's right on PubMed. So Western medicine shows that almost all cases of autoimmunity seem to
Yeah.
have a leaky gut or intestinal permeability component, as they'll call it. And that's them. So you can always usually add 10-20% to that. So I would say it's pretty much every autoimmune client as well. I'd have to agree. What
Mhm.
are some other common things that are coming up on the GI map? Are you seeing, parasites for these people? Is it common to see bacterial overgrowth? I'd love to touch on this.
Mhm. Mhm. H. pylori, super common. Bacterial overgrowth, the autoimmune bacteria, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus. Um, Parasites, not necessarily coming up as much.
Hmm.
I think that it's just difficult to get accurate parasite testing. And in those cases, I'll just ask them more questions, like if they've ever done anything for parasites. Do they have anal itching? Do they have teeth clenching? Do they have these common parasite symptoms? And then, we might do some supplements for parasites anyways for a month or so, just to give them a better baseline.
Mhm.
And yeah, of course, we have the intestinal health markers. So a lot of times people will have the secretory IgA be off, either super high and their immune system's overreactive, or maybe it's actually suppressed because they have been dealing with so much in their body for so long, and also toxins and other stressors in their life.
Sure. We had someone say, where do you start with Crohn's? And I mean, that obviously is an autoimmune. So Is there anything that specifically would change with that, or would you consider that relatively similar to the concepts that you shared with like general autoimmunity?
It's all very similar. When it comes to specifics of autoimmune diseases, I still want to know what the root causes are, which is where all of the questions and testing comes in. But when it comes to looking at more specifics, there may be different supplements that we use in the beginning, depending upon the autoimmune disease, based upon what scientific research is out there for things. So, for something for Crohn's, we might do something more specific to reducing a lot of inflammation quickly in the intestines.
Cool. With the organic acids test, I think that's one that we don't get to talk about nearly enough on this podcast. So, not that I need you to give a whole history on it, but just for those that might be a little confused about what that is, could we give like summary paragraph of what the oat is, and then what markers are you finding on there that are relevant for autoimmune clients?
Oh, good question. Um, so the organic acids test, I'm probably not the best expert at explaining all of the biochemistry behind it by any means, but it's looking at different metabolic pathways in the body. It's looking at things like mitochondrial function, fatty acid oxidation pathways. It's looking at neurotransmitters, so dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. And then one of my favorite places to look on that test is the intestinal health area, looking at the potential overgrowth of yeast and mold in the gut, because the GI map is great. It does look at these things, but it's not always the best at looking at yeast overgrowth. I find the organic acids is much better at looking at that, and also looking at things like C. diff. It seems to be more sensitive in those areas.
Cool. And then with the hair tissue mineral analysis, I mean, you mentioned personally that you had heavy metal toxicity. And then I'm
Mhm.
imagining, just because of the stress that comes with autoimmunity, like a lot of these people are a little lower on the minerals than not. So I'm curious though, are you finding that for the hair tissue mineral analysis, are a lot of these people metal toxic? And I know that might not necessarily show on the first test. So whether it's the first or second, I'm just wondering, are you finding that a lot of these people actually do have metal toxicity?
Yeah, so just as you said, it's not going to show the full metal picture. Somebody might not be excreting all the metals and having them come out in their hair. You would really have to, might want to even look into like the combination of blood, urine, and hair if you wanted to be super diligent about looking at your metals and then increasing detoxification over time. But to answer your question, yes, people normally have heavy metals. The most common one is aluminum, and the second most common is mercury. I have found interesting correlations between people who are hairdressers, construction workers, metal workers, air, pilots, people in the military who have more of the unique metals, like maybe cadmium or something, or different metals, because they're exposed to a lot more toxins in their life than the average person.
And then for the mineral side, can we just kind of explain to the audience, again, we have a lot of people, Rachel, just so you know, that they might just be fresh off like a health coach certification, and then they're listening to us to
Okay.
try to get this extra information. So you're obviously at an advanced level, so that's why I'm kind of asking some simpler stuff, at least relative to your knowledge. So with that said, when we're looking at mineral ratios on the HTMA, like why might that be relevant for someone with autoimmunity? And then, how can we actually support those things for them?
Mm, good question. Um, so, minerals are the spark plugs of our cells, right? Is that common saying that we hear a lot? And I also think of it like gasoline for your car. If you don't put gasoline or oil or anything in your car, it's not going to run properly. If we didn't have minerals, we would literally die. We would cease to exist. We are completely made up of minerals. So if you're low, if you're out of balance, things happen. Immune dysfunction happens, gut dysfunction happens. We become fatigued. We're not digesting our food properly and absorbing our nutrients. So that's really the basis of why minerals are so important. And then we can look at some of the specifics. So, um, for example, we can look at selenium levels on a test. If I have a client with Hashimoto's and they have very, very low selenium. They also have very, very low potassium, which is super common. Their thyroid isn't going to work optimally. So we want to look at these different markers, and ratios can give us more insight into different systems and functions in the body.
Very cool. We do have, it's probably a little earlier than I normally would, but the audience keeps asking stuff, so I'll keep throwing it to you guys because I appreciate you
Okay.
guys participating. Someone said, how do you treat parasites? So with that said, obviously we're not literally treating them. We're not doctors.
Yeah.
So everyone is engaging in a self-treating protocol if they choose to do this. So we educate them on it. It is a choice that they make. That's not just a disclaimer. That's actually true. And so with it worded that way, what are some options, I guess, that people have for addressing parasites?
Mm-hmm. Well, you always want to use a biofilm disruptor to break up the film that is around the pathogen. So this could be breaking up biofilm around parasites, around bacteria, whatever the pathogen is, candida. One of my favorite products is biocidin. I know a lot of people love biocidin drops, so that's an easy go-to. There's obviously other things that you can use as well. Then you want something to actually attack the parasite itself. This could be whatever the practitioner's preference is. There's a couple certain products I really like that are super high in things like black walnut and cloves and different herbs that are targeting the parasites. And then you always want to use a binder, because the binder is going to grab onto the die-off and the toxins from the parasite. If you don't use a binder, you're going to make your client feel really crappy. And to complete that statement, it's also opening up drainage pathways and supporting the detox pathways before you even dive into a parasite protocol or any kind of pathogen or detox protocol at all.
Yeah, you go too strong, especially with the biocidin too fast. I had years ago when I first tried that didn't go too well for me. Got to definitely make sure you're titrating up and then cleaning up the stuff, right, as well. So I don't think this whole question will show on the screen. Oh, yes, it did. All right. Do you present different diets depending on the changes a person is willing to make? For example, going carnivore for a month and coming back to an anti-inflammatory diet.
So I present all of my clients, because they're all chronic illness, autoimmune, usually, most of them are going on an autoimmune plan from the get-go. And we do that for a few months, and then I take them through a gentle reintroduction process to help them identify what foods they are reacting to without having to dive into possibly inaccurate food sensitivity testing. If somebody came to me and they said, I wanted to do the carnivore diet for a month, I would let them try it if they really wanted to. I mean, it's their body and they can test it. Although I really, really think that prebiotic fibers and probiotics and fiber is important for the digestive system and the microbiome. That's just what I see with clients. If somebody is having trouble implementing their nutrition plan in the beginning, like they're just, because you have two camps. You have the people who are like, I got this. I'm going to go hard for the 3 months and know that it's only 3 months and it's a very short period of time. And then you have the people who like live and die by food and enjoyment from their food, and they kind of freak out. And so with those people, we might make some exceptions and some swaps, and that's all on an individual basis, just depending upon where they're at in their life.
Yeah, and this is just a personal follow-up for clarity for people. If they haven't heard of the autoimmune protocol, autoimmune paleo diet, I've heard it both ways as well, right? AIP diet. We're saying it out loud. It's obviously a paleo diet, but we're adding that word of autoimmune. So I think I'd have to imagine most listeners are familiar with paleo. So how is that a little bit different, though, if it's autoimmune paleo diet?
So we're taking out more foods. We are taking out nuts and seeds, eggs, nightshades, chocolate, coffee. I think that's it. Yeah, those are the additional ones that we take out. Well, listen. There are so many swaps. I tell all my clients, or when they first come to me, because they're like, oh no, I can't have this food. Trust me, there is a swap for everything, and I will challenge anybody who says that there's not a swap for something. The thing that's crazy is, a decade ago when I was doing this diet, I couldn't just go to the grocery store and buy a cassava tortilla wrap that is in the frozen section from Siete, or I couldn't find like tiger nut butter instead of almond butter. So there's so many options out there for the swaps. It's not as hard as people think.
Yeah, I love that you said that because I totally agree. Like as this has become a bigger and bigger thing, like all these companies respond to the consumer demand. So we vote with our dollars. And if we're all saying we want organic, they do organic. If we say we want gluten-free, they do gluten-free. Now we do have to be careful because there's a lot of sketchy brands out there that they're good at putting the label of gluten-free on and they might meet the requirement for that even, but the other ingredients are crap. And so I do agree though that there's a lot of great stuff. You wouldn't necessarily eat it every day. But like Maddie and I have been enjoying this gluten-free mac and cheese recently. The ingredients are overall fine. Again, I don't know if I would eat that in general every single day, but like as fun little Sunday meal that we're having together, it's perfect. And mac and cheese, dude, I love mac and cheese. I haven't had that in years. And we just discovered this recently, but like there's no way that was in the store 10 years ago. So especially with things like gluten, dairy less so, but definitely still, yes, dairy. There's great replacements for this stuff. Gluten doesn't even matter to me. That one, truly, you can replace and never think twice about it. You're going to spend more, but you can replace it and never think twice. Dairy's a harder one to replace, but hey, all good there. So looks like the questions may have paused for a second, so I can go back to my line of questioning here.
Cool.
I wanted to know, so nowadays, I mean, there's so many things to talk to you about regarding FDN and then also this autoimmune side. So how has, if I can shout out FDN, how has the FDN course and program been a part of your journey into being able to do what you do now? Because I do know you have other certifications and areas of study, obviously, but and you don't need to overemphasize it. I just want to know the true answer. Like, how much has FDN contributed to where you're at now, health-wise and business-wise?
So, business-wise has completely changed my life. I mean, if I had dropped, I wouldn't have dropped out of medical school if I didn't know that FDN existed. To be very clear, I kind of had talked to somebody in FDN before I dropped out and understood that I could run the testing because I knew that at the root, that's really what I wanted to kind of back up all the lifestyle stuff and make the real changes that really work. So from that perspective, I can't see me doing my business without the functional lab testing, and that's like everything. And when I first started, I did use FDN's foundational labs that they teach and really enjoyed that. And then I learned more and I branched out and I tried different things and I kind of found my own path. But I think the basis of what it was taught throughout the entire program and the just all of the support you get, even being a new FDN, the extra help you can get reviewing labs. I learned so much from I don't do those consults anymore, but in the beginning, like I would always review with an advisor and try and learn as much and absorb as much as possible. And, you get your own mentor in that. Like if you were to just learn this stuff on your own, you do need someone to help you with your practice as you are practicing this stuff and learning over time.
Yeah, and you used the word foundational labs, and that's exactly what they're supposed to be. They are foundational. FDN is a system that anyone can come do this. And if that's all you ever did, I mean, that's great. You'll be able to help a lot of people and you'll get them to a much better place in their health. And then the world of medicine, healthcare, nutrition, I mean, these are ever evolving things. So I've said this recently on a podcast too, and I think I said it in our Holistic Health Week last week. It's like, I almost wish that anyone, whether they're a traditional MD, an FDN practitioner, an IIN health coach, acupuncturist, I don't care what you are, but if you're in this area of healthcare where you're helping other people with their health, I almost wish like there was a commitment that we had to make to lifelong learning until we have answers for 100% of people 100% of the time, which clearly we don't. No one has that. Then it's like, I think we have a duty to them to make sure that we're continuously educating ourselves so that we can serve clients at a higher and higher level. And speaking of which, one of the things that you got super good at is knowing about Lyme disease and the implications there. And we couldn't not shout this out on the podcast. I wasn't going to not bring this up. So Rachel is not only an FDN grad, but you've gotten advanced enough with this stuff that you're actually helping produce advanced courses for us. So you just co-created an advanced Lyme course for us. So let's talk about that.
Oh my gosh. I don't know why I didn't think we were going to talk about this today. Yeah. So I really have to shout out Dr. Tom Moorcroft for being the bread and butter for that course, to be honest, because he is the one, and if nobody knows who he is, he has been he is a doctor who has been treating very sick Lyme disease, tick-borne infection clients for over 15 years. And he's really good at what he does using natural protocols as well as antibiotics. And we came together actually almost 2 years ago, which is crazy. It was a very long creation process. And we decided that we wanted to bring something to functional practitioners like myself to be able to learn, how do we deal with people with Lyme disease? And I really resonated with this when he first brought it to me, because I remember the first time I had came in contact with a client who I realized had chronic Lyme disease, who I was already working with. And I felt like I didn't have a lot of knowledge to help them. And also even going through and asking people in FDN, like I feel like I needed more direction. And so he really comes in that course with all of that stuff that you need as an FDN, the understanding of the antibiotics. How do you determine if someone should get Lyme disease testing? What's the right Lyme disease testing to use? Because a lot of people aren't using the right stuff. When do you test? What are all the symptoms? What do you look for? What are the herbal remedies and protocols that you can confidently give your client who has either acute or chronic Lyme disease, and what's that whole process look like? So that can be literally life-changing for somebody. And from my perspective, I'm really teaching all of the FDN type things, the holistic health coach type things. So the nutrition, talking about detoxification pathways and how to open those, talking about mindset, nervous system regulation, just different holistic practices that you can take combined with Dr. Moorcroft's really great Lyme approach.
Super cool. So that's on our website under our advanced courses. You actually don't need to be an FDN to take our advanced courses, by the way. And this question always comes up, so I have to explain this briefly. It's like, I understand the name advanced courses. I almost wish that they were called intensives, only because advanced implies, wait a second, I got to do FDN, then I got to do all these things. It's like, no, you don't have to do any of them, nor do you have to be an FDN to do them. They are more, in my opinion, intensives on very specific topics so that you can dive deep, either as a standalone or as an addition to your FDN practice. So I just thought it was so cool when I saw your name pop up the other day. It's like new advanced course. I'm like, okay, I'll check it out. It's like, oh, Rachel Smith, like this is freaking awesome.
Yeah. There's also, I want to say one more thing on that, because if somebody, Lyme disease is like, it's a big topic. It's a big thing to deal with a client. And after you go through the course, we are offering what I think is a pretty affordable mentorship program after. So if somebody wants that one-on-one support from myself and Dr. Moorcroft, then they have that after they go through the course. And I think it's really helpful.
Cool. All right. So with that said, like on the topic of today, and this is probably the last one I'll talk about with this, and then we'll talk more about where people can find you. But Lyme disease and autoimmune, right? I can't leave people on a cliffhanger here. I have to ask, like, how often is a chronic Lyme case implicated with autoimmunity, or are they unrelated? Like, tell us more about that.
I think they're very related. I think that many chronic Lyme disease cases that are actually undiscovered, so the person doesn't know that they have chronic Lyme, are actually misdiagnosed as autoimmune diseases. This has been my experience with chronic Lyme people, is I'm actually discovering the Lyme disease, and the clients have been suffering with Crohn's disease, Hashimoto's, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis. I'm just thinking back to some clients who have came to me telling me, hey, this is what I have. And then after realizing, oh, wait a second, like the regular stuff I normally do isn't working on you. Oh, wait a second, you live where? Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, your dog had Lyme disease, or you have horses, or you live on a farm, or you got bit. Wait, you got bit by a tick. So really investigating that stuff and realizing that, okay, you actually have Lyme disease. And that was really the main root cause for you that became this labeled autoimmune disease that you got. So I think it's a lot more common than people think. And it's typically those people who have resistance to the protocols and they're not getting better and you feel like you've done everything, you really got to ask those additional questions to figure out if it's something like that going on.
Well, it's such an important topic for someone like me who grew up and still lives in Pennsylvania. They do
Mm,
these surveys and studies every year on like the ticks that are in our area. But there's so many people can't comprehend it if they're not like from the Northeast or the East Coast in general. Like, I mean, if I go through the backyard and I walk barefoot for 500 feet that way and 500 feet back, it's not like I guarantee I'll have a tick on me. Like, so you're just
mm,
picking them off or flicking them off because they haven't attached yet.
yeah.
But it's just something you have to constantly be aware of here. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because, again, they do these studies every year where they show the rates of Lyme disease or ticks that are carrying Lyme disease, and they carry other stuff too, of course, all throughout the state. And like 2 years ago, the lowest county, it was like 30% of the ticks in that specific county carried Lyme disease. Like the highest was like 48, 50%. I mean, it is nuts and they're everywhere. So Maddie and I just went on a walk the other day, not like through a field, just through a path that happened to have some grass, and she had 2 ticks on her by the time we got
Mm,
back. So I think there needs to be more awareness about prevention, because it's not just ticks, but like insect bites and all these things. Like people need to prevent that. That would be great.
yeah.
But most people got this stuff when they were younger and have no idea that they've been dealing with it for years, like you said.
You should use permethrin
Okay.
on your clothes.
Is it
Or
that's an actual chemical though, right?
it is a chemical, so yeah, you shouldn't put it like sprayed on your pets or anything, and it should
Mhm.
be sprayed on your socks and pants and let them dry before you put them on. But like that's the strong stuff, and then you
Mhm.
have some other options like cedar-based oils that are non-toxic and natural that you could also use. But yeah, gosh, if you're getting ticks on you all the time, I would be spraying that stuff all over my clothes.
Yeah, we got to do like a full inspection each time. So anyway,
Mhm.
anyway, all right. I'll word it this way. I'd like to know where people can find you, but even preceding that, you rattled off some like seemingly amazing stories. So I don't know
Mm.
if we have the time, if you are okay with it, to kind of dive into one a little bit deeper. I would just love
Mm.
to hear like one of your favorite client testimonials at this point, because again, I remember when we first started interacting, like you were really hitting the ground running with FDN. You've now worked with hundreds of people all over the world, which is amazing. So, to the degree that you're able to share, I would just love to hear like an amazing story of someone who came to
Mm.
you with autoimmunity, ideally, and has
Mhm.
now gotten to the other side with it. And then shout out where people can find you.
Oh gosh, there's so many good ones, but I'll mention one that I already alluded to,
Mhm.
which was a woman in her late mid 20s who came to me with rheumatoid arthritis in quotes, and she was the one with the wrist, like her wrist was becoming immobile.
Mhm.
It was very painful, really really bad pain in her hands and wrists. And here's the kicker. She was a photographer, but then she couldn't do her photography, right? If you have an immobile wrist, you're not clicking a camera and you're not working. So this person couldn't work, was being told that she had to have surgery. And no joke, within 4 months, she regained complete mobility, didn't have to get surgery, and doesn't have any pain or inflammation anymore.
Nice.
So, yeah, and her specifically, we did a lot of those foundational labs that I talked about, GI map, OAT, HTMA, all of that stuff.
Was she just like mind blown going from like that prognosis to like, not only can I do well with this, but I don't have it anymore? Was that just like paradigm blast?
Yeah, it was amazing, and then I got to see her start up her photography again, and I that's my favorite part, is like watching people regain joy in their life and be
Mhm.
able to work again or spend time with their family or do things that they weren't able to do before, and that was really the coolest, most rewarding part.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll end on that because that's kind of the basic thing that we're all doing. It's like, yes, it's health stuff, but you think about, okay, what does that really mean? You have these symptoms or diagnoses that prevent you or cause you so much pain that you can't do the things in life that you love. That's really what this whole health journey is. So it's the most amazing thing to experience it. One, just selfishly, it's awesome to experience it. But when you can give
Mhm.
that to others, first the hope and then the execution of it, and it's like, yeah, no, my life is literally different because I worked with this person, or my life came back because I worked with this person. That's about as good as it gets. We got people sending like clappy emojis in the chat. So you guys are great. And if they are interested in working with someone like you and they're like, holy crap, this woman's so impressive, like I have autoimmune stuff, where can they find you, my friend?
So my business name is Natural Health Rising, and that is me everywhere. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, you name it, Natural Health Rising. And then my website is naturalhealthrising.com. I am most active with messaging on Instagram. So if you ever want to send me a direct message, I always reply to those messages. It's really easy there. And then you can always go to my website or any of my like links in my profiles anywhere, and you'll find a free consult link if you want to grab that.
All right, guys. And remember, Rachel helped create this awesome advanced Lyme course. So she's very well-versed on that. She's well-versed on mold and other things. So if you'd like her to come back on, just let me know in the comments, or if you're listening to the audio afterwards or watching a replay later, send us an Instagram message at FDN Training. We would love to have her back on. It'd be cool to talk to her again anytime. And so Rachel, I don't know if you remember from all those years ago, 2.5 at this point, the final question on the show, but the signature question is, if I could give you a magic wand and you could wave it and you could force all of our listeners to do one thing for their health, whether you get us to start doing one thing or stop doing one thing, what's the one thing Rachel gets us to do?
Have more fun. I know it sounds silly, but like have a lot of fun, be goofy, be yourself, play. Because, oh my gosh, we get so stuck in our heads, so stuck in our work, so stuck in our health, obsessing over our health and all these things we have to do. We forget that actually, if we just let go and play and have fun and dance and be goofy, a lot of that stress and that stuff will melt away. And it's really good for our health.
Cool. Thank you so much, my friend. I have a good feeling we will be doing this again sooner rather than later. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.